This is In the Trenches, Broadcast 4.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today's guest is Jeff Goins. Now, this interview was actually recorded in December of 2012. However, that was before I had this podcast up and running. So I felt it necessary to remaster this original content and put it into this podcast so that all of the In the Trenches listeners can have access to it. This content, I think, is incredible, and I don't want you to miss it. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll get right into it. Jeff is a blogger, speaker, published author, and most importantly, a writer. His blog, goinswriter.com, is all about that same subject, writing. His blog focuses on some essential questions like, how do successful writers make a living? And what does it really take to get published? And Jeff doesn't pull any punches with his website. It really is an incredible resource for aspiring writers and artists alike. Jeff started his blog in 2010 and has had some incredible and well-deserved success, growing his readership to over 100,000 people a month in less than 2 years. Jeff has been featured in Relevant Magazine as well as ZenHabits.net, among many, many other publications. You can find his most recent book, Wrecked, When a Broken World Slams into Your Comfortable Life, online at Amazon.com and in bookstores just about everywhere. So Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us today, and I'd like to start by finding out a little bit more about you, your background, and how you got started writing.
Yeah, sounds great. So I've written my whole life, but up until recently, didn't really consider myself a writer. I would call myself somebody who wrote, or I would call it a hobby or something. But I was really uncomfortable with calling myself a writer, and I think the reason for that was because there was a certain amount of responsibility and expectation associated with that. If I called myself a writer, then I'd have to start acting like it, and that really intimidated me. So, I was maybe a couple of years ago was talking to a friend, and he asked me what my dream was. And this had been coming up pretty, regularly. Like I'd gone to a conference, and that was sort of the focus of the conference, and several people over the course of a couple of months had asked me what my dream was. And so it was really interesting how this kept coming up over and over again. And so this friend asked me what my dream was, and I said, I don't really have a dream. I think that's kids' stuff. And he said, "Oh, well, that's too bad, because I would have thought that your dream was to be a writer." When he said that, something really struck me. I was convicted and immediately struck with this emotion that resonated in my soul that, this was right. And so I said, yeah, I guess so. I guess that, I'd like to be a writer someday. And he just shook his head and he said, "Well, Jeff, you don't have to want to be a writer. You are a writer. You just need to write." And so the next day I started writing, got up at 5 a.m. and just started writing. And I did this consistently every day for about a year. And at the beginning of that year, I started a blog. I started the blog that you mentioned. I'd been blogging, in different places on the web for a while, but had done it pretty inconsistently and not with a lot of commitment. And I just decided to do it differently this time. And over the course of a year, grew a fairly large audience in a short amount of time. And I got a book publishing deal that year, and a lot of other cool things happened.
That's awesome. I'm just super impressed. I think anybody listening will feel the same way. Super impressed by how quickly you were able to build such a large following and get published. And tell me what you think of this. I would say that it's not that it wasn't random and it wasn't actually that quick. I'm guessing that you had been improving your writing skills for years and years and years. And so it wasn't just an overnight success, or was it?
Yeah, so I mean, the backstory is, I spent 5 years writing in anonymity and failing in a lot of ways until I was able to have this really great year where seemingly a lot of things just suddenly happened. And even that year was full of a lot of hustle. I was working a day job, and so I was getting up early. I didn't have time to write. I was working, a job. I was married. My wife and I just had our first son, first baby, and our son's 7 months old now, and so our life was getting busier.
Congratulations!
Yeah, thanks. Our life has been getting busier. It's not been slowing down; it's been filling up. And so when I felt this call to write, I didn't have room in my life to do it, and so I had to make room. And the best way that I could make room was by creating a schedule block that did not exist in my daily routine. And that was from 5 to 7 a.m., which I was normally spending sleeping. But I realized that I could go to bed an hour earlier than I normally did and wake up 2 hours earlier and still get a decent amount of sleep. And I had this block of time where nobody was really expecting anything from me at 5 a.m. My wife wasn't awake yet. My boss wasn't awake yet, or at least I wasn't getting emails from him anyway. And so I had some time to write. And so I spent a lot of time practicing and failing. And then before I launched the blog, and then when I launched the blog, I wrote almost every day. On that blog, yeah. I wrote over 300 posts in a year. And I wrote 100 different articles for other websites in addition to those 300 posts to try to get my name out there. So it was a lot of work, and I built. I started the blog with the expectation that it would take me years to do anything substantial, and so I was prepared for that. I was prepared to put in a couple years of work before I saw any sort of return on the investment of time I was putting into it.
That's incredible. It says a lot about not only your commitment, definitely about your commitment and your character, but what it takes, I think, to be successful at anything. I think when you come at it with that mindset that this is, a long-term thing, that you're committed to it, that commitment, again, kind of keeps popping up. I think that's so important. And it kind of leads into this next question. So you mentioned that you wrote 100, I'm guessing, guest posts, but I'll let you explain that. But over 300, you wrote every day for a whole year. So over 300 posts for your own blog, plus another 100 elsewhere. So my question is, how did you build your blog so fast and so effectively that you were able to get so many subscribers? I know there's no simple answer to that, but I'd like to just hear whatever you have to say about it.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people waste time and expend energy in this area in ways that don't get them the results that they want. So one of the things that's notable about my community and also yours, Tom, is I attract a lot of writers that whatever they're doing isn't working, and I hear this consistently. I've been doing this and it hasn't worked. And typically, what they've been doing is they're writing and they're publishing on their blog every day, and they're writing pretty good content, and they're just not seeing any sort of results. But when you really get down to it, there's a couple of things that myths that they're believing. One is what was true about the internet a decade ago, or even 6 or 7 years ago, is not true about the internet now. If you're trying to build an online audience, which is this, that you used to be able, when Seth Godin started blogging, when some of the, when Chris Brogan started blogging, when these people who sort of paved the way for the blogosphere, when they started, basically all you had to do was have a blog and not quit, and you were remarkable. You were weird, and people would read your blog. That was the basic formula: was get a blog, write on it every day, just keep showing up, and eventually people will pay attention to you. And unfortunately, that's not true anymore because there's so much competition. There's so many blogs out there. A lot of people are applying this formula. They're showing up every day. They're creating pretty good content, and there's just so much noise that there's too many blogs. There's too many people talking that we can't pay attention to all of it. So what do you need to do? I think you have to go above and beyond. And so I was showing up every day, but I was doing something that I'd never done before, Tom. I was writing content that would take me an hour or two to write, sometimes 3 hours to write.
Yes. And
I was publishing it on my blog for free. I was writing content that I should have been getting paid for. I was writing 500 to 1,000 word articles 5 days a week and giving them away for free on my blog consistently. And I'd never done that before. I'd gotten up and thrown together a 20-minute blog post based on whatever I thought about when I was brushing my teeth in the morning, but I never sat down and written an article and shared it for free with no expectation of compensation. So, I think that when we're honest about the stuff that we're creating, we're really creating like B+ content, like pretty good, better than average, but not our very best work. And when I started creating my best work and being generous with it, I saw that people paid attention to that. So that was the first thing I did. Was there's no B content on my blog. Maybe it's somebody else's B content, but it's my best stuff. It's my A content. And then I started doing that same thing for other people. I started giving away, not repurposing old blog posts, but giving away what I thought were really great contributions to other communities, other blogs that had larger audiences than I did. And I found that when I did that, people would link back to me, and those people would read that content, and they'd come back to my blog, and they'd find other great content, and they'd want to subscribe. And so when I talk to people who say, I'm doing everything I can, we go and look at their blog and talk about their content, and I ask them, are you creating the very best stuff you could possibly create? They say, well, no, I'm throwing together what I can. And so consistency is important, frequency is important, getting your name out there is important, but for me, it all comes down to creating your very best work. And if you can do that, then it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time, writing a guest post for ProBlogger, Copyblogger, meeting somebody at a conference. Right. Building those relationships is not the hard part. I think the hard part is having something to say and saying in a way that that is going to earn people's attention.
Incredible. I loved everything you just said. It's mind-blowing. It's funny you mentioned the time you spent putting into it. And I'd say, and part of it might be like, I put a lot into the look, just how the words look. I'm all about presentation and not only the sound and, what you're used to when you write. So not only the quality of the content, what's actually in there, but then the form it takes on paper, or in this case on the screen, is really important to me. So I spend so much time tweaking that to make it perfect for me. And I'm if I don't stop myself, I'll go sometimes for a 500-word post, I'll spend 3 or 4 hours on it. So I need to. Well, on the one hand, definitely need to improve, but I know I'm definitely giving my best. So it's always a comforting thought to know that will be. I believe if I continue to do that, it'll pay off in the future.
Yeah, I do the same thing, Tom. There's a reason why people call, you don't hear this very often, but people call blogging publishing. It literally is publishing. And when you think about, when I write a manuscript and send it to my publisher, and you mentioned React, I wrote that on, as a Word document. I sent it to my publisher, and then they designed it. They designed, right. They typeset it. They designed the margins and the paragraph breaks, and they typeset it, and they aligned it, and they chose the fonts. They made it look good. I just wrote the words. When you're publishing on a blog, you're doing all of that. You're writing, you're editing, and you're publishing. You're not just sharing a Word document with friends. You're actually creating a published work, and so you're the writer, editor, and you're the designer just by changing, using subheads and bold and italics, all of those formatting. Those are typographic design elements. Exactly. And you're right. We are all visual people, and if I see a big chunk of text on an ugly looking website, it doesn't matter how great the content is, within reason. Like if it's not formatted well for me, I'm not going to pay attention to it. And so that is, to me, it's equally important. Somebody that cares about aesthetic excellence. I do the same thing. I write it, and then I go back and I go, is this friendly to my readers' eyes, or are they going to go, oh, no, I can't even scan this, And for me, it's really important to not assume my readers' attention, but to earn it. And one of the ways that I do that is by making the content easier to read, so that I can actually keep their attention.
That's incredible. I totally agree. 100%. And it is so much more than just writing and just pushing out there. Again, coming back to what you mentioned about Seth Godin and those other guys, it was just remarkable just to stick around for a long, long time. But the I guess you could say the game has gotten more competitive, and you got to up your own game to compete, or to be somebody that people want to stick around with and give their attention to. So yeah, incredible. So I guess that kind of leads into a little bit. You mentioned your book. I'd like to know about. Tell us a little bit about your book. So I read it. I'm familiar with it. And I guess I wouldn't have expected the book that I read when I read the title, and that's a good thing because when I read it, I was definitely blown away. And I also noticed that a lot of our content is very similar in style, and you have a lot of the same quotations same people that you quote: G.K. Chesterton, Mother Teresa, some incredible people that you mentioned in your book. But I'd like to know about a little bit about what inspired you to write it, about the book itself, and then how you got published.
Yeah, that's a great question. So maybe I'll answer those out of order. So
sure, that's fine.
So if you're familiar with Seth Godin, you're probably familiar with a website called ChangeThis.com, yes. A website where authors, communicators, idea slingers can submit a proposal for a manifesto, and this is a website that Seth Godin helped start and then kind of turned it over to somebody else later on. And so this is basically a place where a lot of business writers, but really anybody who has anything to say, they can propose an idea, they can submit a proposal for an ebook, a manifesto, and then get all of their friends to vote for it. And if it gets enough votes, then Change This will a free online manifesto that can spread. And so what I've been doing for the past 6 years is working for a nonprofit. I started as a writer, and then I became the marketing director, and I'm the communications director for that nonprofit. It's called Adventures in Missions. We do mission work and poverty relief and development work around the world. And I wanted to write a manifesto about this thing that we had seen in the work that we'd done, and I wanted to share it with a broader audience. And the idea was basically this, that people don't find their purpose until they learn to give their lives away. And that usually takes a paradigm shifting moment. And I was looking around at the professional world. I was looking at the business world. I was looking at people like Bill Gates, even the celebrity world, like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt and George Clooney and a number of celebrities. They were all I got an email from, I think, Oxfam, and there was some actress was begging me, was asking me in an email, was appealing for me to give to Africa, to some poverty relief thing, to relieve hunger. Like you just didn't see that a decade ago. It's really interesting how our world has become a lot smaller, how we've become more aware of global issues, and as a result, we've become more socially conscious. And I think that's interesting that one of the richest men in the world is also one of the largest philanthropists. In our culture, if life is about everything that I can accumulate, if the American dream, which isn't relegated just to America, it's the world's dream is to get as much stuff so that I can have the best life possible, then let's look at everybody that has all that stuff and what are they doing with it? Well, they're trying to give away their resources, or they're realizing what I have isn't enough. And so maybe the answer isn't more, maybe the answer is less. Maybe it's not accumulation, but generosity. And so that was that's kind of a countercultural, but at the same time, provocative idea. And so I wanted to share it. So I shared that. It won. We published it on Change This years ago, and then it just kind of hung out on the internet for a while and didn't really do anything. And when I started my blog, I linked to that ebook and on a resources page or something. And when I started to do all these guest posts, my audience started to grow pretty quickly. And an acquisitions editor from my publisher found my blog, started reading it, liked my voice, and he was just looking through all of the different pages of my blog, found this resources page with a link to the Change This manifesto, which was called the Wrecked Manifesto. And he said, he emailed me, he said, have you ever considered turning this into a book? And I never had. And so that began the discussion that led to writing this book, which is, my blog is a lot about creativity and writing and pursuing your calling as a creative. And this book is about, seemingly something different. It's about giving your life away, and it's about some of the things that are a part of my life but weren't necessarily a part of my online persona. And I was a little bit nervous about that, but but I'm glad that I did it, because I think ultimately, I wrote about this in my blog today, I think ultimately we follow writers and authors and communicators not for their subject, not for what they say, but rather how they say it. You know, my blog is about writing and creativity and how you can pursue your calling as a creative. And this was different, you know, and so I was really nervous about that, because I had believed this popular paradigm online, which is that you like pick one subject and then you just write about it and you become an expert in that. And I had started down that road, but there was something about that didn't resonate with me. And I think the reason was all of the writers and authors that I read and appreciated didn't stick to one particular subject or even a genre. Maybe they started there, but once they prove themselves, they branch out into new areas. And so, you know, I wrote about this in my blog today, but I believe that great writers can write about anything, any subject, and we will listen to them, because what we really want, why we really read them, is not for the, you know, what they write about, but how they write it, their perspective, their worldview. And so this, you know, Rect is something that I really believe in, and I believe, and you can see it in my writing. It's already there, but I don't talk about it explicitly. And it's this basic idea that if you want to find your life, you need to give it away. You know, and if you try to hold on to your life, try to hold on to security and stick to the things that are comfortable to you, you're going to lose it. You're going to miss out on the best life that you can have. And so that's what the book is about. And my blog is sort of about that as well, but it's in a different way. I mean, that worldview is there, present, but it's sort of, you know, in undertones. And so this was an exercise for me to introduce to my audience the same worldview that I'd been writing under, but with a different subject. And I was pleased to see that a lot of people, you know, followed the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. Did you ever have any like really negative feedback from it? It seems like most of the feedback was really positive on Amazon. That people, I responded to it very positively. So I just would like to assume everybody's like me, but
yeah, well, you know, I mean, you're always going to have somebody who just goes, I don't like this.
Sure.
And so there were some people. I was nervous that everybody would hate it, you know, or that it would like reach a small sliver of people. But because I had built an audience based on trust and permission, and they had gotten used to my voice, and I was very clear that this is going to be different. This is not a book about writing. I think I had one or two people that were like, you know, really disappointed. And then I had some people who just, you know, it wasn't for them. And that was fine. But no, I mean, there weren't like, as I was fearing, there were no droves of people who were, you know, who just totally hated it. And so, yeah, I think it felt like a success, and it was, you know, one more step in the direction of showing people that, okay, I'm not trying to own a subject, you know, or monopolize a topic. I'm just trying to introduce to you my voice. And that's going to happen gradually. You know, I saw an interview with Taylor Swift not too long ago, and she talked about how she's, you know, she just turned 22 maybe, and she said, you know, there is stuff that I want to create, music that I want to share, art that I want to see spread, that, you know, that I'm ready to do, but it's not for several years. And so I want to be sensitive to where my audience is at and what they're used to, but I've got stuff that I want to share that's way different. And so for right now, I'm going to be 22. I'm not going to be 30. You know, I'm not going to be 40. She goes, a lot of people are growing up too fast, and I'm going to be where I'm at. I'm going to keep moving in that direction, and at the same time, you know, respect my audience. And to me, that was a really good depiction of kind of the challenge of being an artist with an audience. You know, and with a blog or, you know, social media, you have direct connection to your audience, and so that can be really good, but it can also be really scary, you know, when it comes to taking risks. And so I always want to take those measured risks. I don't want to stagnate, but I want to do interesting stuff, and you know, take a few steps ahead and look behind me and go, okay, audience, he's still there. Like, can we move forward? Can we evolve together? And so far, that's been really fun.
Yeah, it's so true. Great point. Who would have thought that Taylor Swift would have had such a great advice to impart? Yeah. But no, that's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of wisdom.
Yeah. So I guess we'll wrap it up with one question. I don't know how long it'll take, but take your time with it. And it's, what piece of advice do you have for the creative person? In particular, like writer, author, or somebody who wants to write novels or screenplays, or publish books or something like that in that realm, in the realm you're in and I'm in. And what would you say to that person who's just starting out and who doesn't want to compromise their content or water down their message to try to get sales? I guess that's my question. If I could make it simpler, would be how does an author, or especially a new author, not get discouraged by the concept of having to compromise his work to get sold?
Yeah, Tom, I think that's a great question. I also think it's a load of BS.
Okay.
Not the question, but that paradigm. And so
sure.
I feel like I can speak, somewhat educatedly on this because
yes.
what I've been doing for the past 6 years, not a super long time, but, not 6 months, I've been managing creatives. In the past, 5 or 6 years, I've been working with a lot of young creatives, probably 20 or 25 people that are videographers and musicians and writers and designers and marketers, people who have a message to share, but they're creatives, they're artists, and
right.
I was always trying to get them to market, and there was always that conflict of, this is my art, this is what I feel called to create, but I feel sleazy about trying to get people to look at it. I just want to create. And so, now I talk to a lot of people who want to, write novels, and want to find a way to support themselves, but they don't want to compromise their art like you're talking about. And I think that what they're really doing is they're hiding. And so what is my advice? Stop hiding. Okay, so what I mean by that? I mean, the only way that you get good, that you get really good, is by creating something and sharing it with the world and getting
yes.
feedback on it, and then, creating something else and making it better, and creating something else and making it better. I had a friend who was at a writers' conference recently, and he met a best-selling novelist, this guy who publishes thrillers with one of the big 6 publishers. And my friend asked this person, when does an author find his voice? And my friend, in the back of his mind, he's an aspiring novelist, but he hasn't written a novel yet. He's a fiction writer, but he hasn't actually published a novel yet. And in his mind, he thought, I would like to write 5 great novels in my lifetime. Like, that's all I want to do. He had a very specific vision. If it takes me 25 years to do that, fine. But this is the contribution that I want to give to the world. Mm-hmm. So he asked this best-selling novelist who's written 30 books, how do you do this? How do you find your voice? And the novelist said, well, I didn't find my voice until my 6th or 7th book. So here's my friend who wants to write 5 books in his lifetime. And here's this best-selling novelist who's telling him, not until you write 5 crappy novels do you write 1 good book. Do you begin to get into the zone. And so what's my advice? Write something. Stop hiding, by saying you're creating something that the world hasn't yet seen. And I know that there's this tension that we all have to live in, where, like, we all know those websites and those books and all the bad art out there that's really popular. And we go, I don't want to do that. And so what we do is we, like, hide and hang out and keep that novel in our desk drawer or that song on our laptop or whatever, and we just get really bitter. I know what that feels like, because I did that for 5 years. I saw all these bad bloggers out there, and I thought I could do better. And all the while, they were hogging all the attention, because the truth is I couldn't do better because I wasn't doing better. So who cares if I could do better? They were doing something, and I was doing nothing. And so, I have a friend who's a musician, and unlike most musicians, this person is a millionaire. This person is rich, but he lives off of a fraction of his income. And he's very generous. And he said, the way I see it is somebody is going to pay for music. Somebody is going to pay to see concerts and go to these events. And I can let all of the charlatans and bad artists out there get compensated for bad art, or I can get as many of those resources as possible and funnel those towards good causes. I mean, he has this really competitive edge to him where he goes, I don't want the bad art to win. I want the good art to win. And in order to do that, you have to care about marketing. You have to care about what it takes to make an idea to spread. Do I care about good art? Absolutely. Do I want to make contributions to the world? Yes. Am I willing to wait until my work is perfect before I'm going to put it out there to compete with all of the other junk out there? No. No, it's more important to me to put something out there so that I can learn from it, so that I can get better, so that I can get to excellence faster. And so if you're like me and like I was, where you just see all the bad art and you go, gosh, I just want out of this rat race, stop hiding, because your novel isn't doing anybody any good in your dresser drawer.
I love it. Couldn't have said it better myself. So powerful and so true. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for talking today in the interview and just getting a portion of your time. I know you're super busy. You mentioned at the beginning of the interview how hard it was to start out and kind of you had to make your own time. Well, I'm guessing with some of the stuff you're releasing right now, which will be in the show notes, that life hasn't gotten any less busy. So thank you.
My pleasure, Tom. Yeah, thank you.
Well, that wraps up In the Trenches Broadcast 4. If you're interested in checking out the show notes, go to www.tommorkes.com/broadcast4. That's the number 4. I hope you enjoyed today's broadcast, and I hope it inspires you to continue to fight the creative fight. This is Tom Morkes. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkes.com. Never fight alone. Join the resistance.